Thank you. First of all, this is going to be really informal. I've given this presentation actually a couple of times already. Meg and I are very familiar with it. So if you want to ask questions as we're moving along, more than welcome to. I really feel that we're going to open up the questions and answers when it's over. If this kind of starts to head towards the roundtable or towards the discussion that you guys are setting up this afternoon, that's fine as well. But again, don't feel bad about interrupting. We have plenty of time. So, quick about me. I'm with American Transmission Company. I work with quite a few of you, or at least you get phone calls from me saying, begging, pleading, hey, I need data. Can I get it right now? Can I get it yesterday? Yep, that's me.
I'm Megan. I work for Stantec Consulting, and I'm a GIS environmental specialist, and do a lot of work with ATC.
Okay, so a little bit about ATC. If you don't know much about us, we have almost 10,000 miles of transmission line. And that goes throughout the state of Wisconsin, the UP, we just touched Minnesota a little bit, and Illinois a little bit. So we kind of get data from all kinds of places. We also have our customers, and our customers are We Energies, Alliant, WPS, MG&E, so we actually have customers themselves. But what we're trying to get across from you is our customers turn around and they affect the ratepayers. So whenever we're trying to purchase data and things like that, it's kind of a trickle down all the way from there. Currently, we touch about 73 counties, but that's actually increasing from there. So again, what is transmission? And I kind of like this because we're really the middleman. We don't create power. We are not the power plants. We are not distribution. That's your We Energies and things like that. We are actually taking high voltage, long distances, and by us maintaining all of Wisconsin and the UP, we can actually more effectively do it and get it to who needs to, and who needs it and when they need it. Oh, sorry.
And so I just wanted to familiarize you all a little bit with Stantec. So Stantec is a company that was founded in 1954, so it's been around for a while. It's publicly traded on 2 stock exchanges. We have 59 years of uninterrupted profitability. There's 200 locations throughout North America. You find an office in a lot of locations. I myself work out of the Cottage Grove office, which is right outside of Madison. And we have a really diverse range of services and sectors, engineering, environmental, real estate. We cover all the bases. So this is just a little snapshot to show you too kind of where our offices are located throughout the United States. And this might be kind of hard to see for you guys, but this is just a little background information that anytime folks from Stantec go out and do a presentation, we like to introduce and start off with this slide. And it's just talking about that our community unites about 13,000 specialists working in about 200 locations. We do planning, engineering, architecture, landscape design, surveying, environmental work, and we have a long-term commitment to people and places that we serve, and we have a unique ability to connect projects on a personal level and advance the quality of life and community across. And in particular, this talks about our environmental services that we offer. This is the sector that I'm involved with. So for environmental services within Stantec, we have 2,500 environmental staff, about 20 technical specialties, and 900 professional associations. We like to balance project interest with creativity and efficiency, focusing on safety, quality, ethics, all the important things. And again, running from a complex permit application, monitoring during construction, designing plans, we do a lot in the environmental work.
Okay, so now kind of to the meat and potatoes. We internally have kind of customers within ATC, and those people come to GIS all the time, like all of you. We have multiple departments, so we have engineering, environmental, maintenance, public relations, real estate, and veg management. All of these use our GIS system. Now, not only are they using where our structures are located, where substations are located, but they really need to know how they can get out and they can get a hold of people, so those contacts. So they may actually be using a variety of ways to get that information. For example, how do they see it? We have our internal GeoCortex site, so they actually go and they can look up that information themselves. This is one or two names, they'll look it up, they don't need to come to me for that. Certainly we have pre-printed maps that we have for them, so that if they immediately need to run out in the field, again, they don't need to talk to me. I rerun these every 6 months, they're all set to go. And we have tables. But the one thing that we want to stress on here is we're constantly putting on parcel owner information on that. It's always changing, it's always updating. So we really have to balance internally going, how up to date is up to date? Certainly you guys are doing this job every single day. Some of you update at the end of the year, some of you do it during the year. For us, we have to figure out what makes the most sense for us to be able to maintain that. In most cases, we figure that if that data is, say, more than 3 years old, it's aged. We need to get it updated. Part of the problem, though, is a lot of times we'll have somebody from engineering call us up and say, hey, I need this data right now, send it to me. I'm going to look at that saying, well, I haven't had another project there in 4 or 5 years. The data I have is old. I'm going to have to reach out to the county and say, beg and plead. A lot of you have heard me call and say, I can really use this data. Somebody wants it right away, and for a variety of reasons, whether I have to get a check cut, whether they're out, whatever it may be, I'm going to have to come back to them and say, well, I can get you some preliminary data right now for the engineer and recut it as soon as I get the new stuff, or we kind of have to go back and forth. So, with that said, is how did this project get started? Internally, we already have a database design. That design was done by Andrea Fagan. Many of you worked with her many years ago. Well, she came up with is, what are the basic attributes that we need to get out to everybody? And we standardize it. Because we don't have to worry about politics or anything like that. We all agreed upon it and said, okay, ready to go. Maintaining that new data set. As we have projects come in, we're cutting out old data, we're slapping in new data. What does that mean to us? Well, we only maintain within 500 feet of our transmission lines. In most cases, we don't care outside of there. And we maintain it in SDE. We have somewhere around 200,000 parcels that we're maintaining, and that's just within 500 feet of our lines. If we were to build that up for the state of Wisconsin or these 73 counties we deal with, it would be pretty huge. So, what happened? Just like everybody else, we have budgets internally, and those budgets are constantly fluctuating. And they came to our department in November and they said, you know what, we have some money to spend by the end of the year. You have to spend it by the end of the year. Okay, we see your parcels are really aged. Let's get them all up to speed right now. That's when I said, myself and one other GIS professional said, we really don't have that kind of time, especially at the end of the year. We have other projects. And that's where we reached out to Stantec. Part of the reason we reached out to Stantec is they did have a group ready to go, so they had people with some availability. And we certainly had some contracts set up ahead of them, so it was really easy for us to keep going. Again, you can't see this from where you're at, but pretty basic database design. What are we interested in? We're obviously interested in the parcel ID, the owner name, their mailing address, and then if we're really lucky, we might get what is the property address, and then we tag it with other pieces. For example, what is the municipality, town section range, and we actually add another column in there called data date. The reason we add that certainly is because we're pulling it from different time periods. We can immediately go and look at that and say, oh, this is old data, and everybody can see it, including people going through our websites. So, in a very quick time period, we kind of kicked it off. And when I say time period, I think we got money on like a Monday, and the next Thursday we were already kicking off this project. I mean, we turned this around really, really quick. And I went down and sat down with Megan and their group and said, okay, how many people can you throw at this? And we kind of set up a staffing. How many people were they going to throw at it? What was the tracking spreadsheet? We kind of collected what a lot of you guys would love to know. We would love to know, how much is this project really going to cost us? When this got started, they came to me and they said, okay, give me a price. Well, you know what? I can go to Justin, I get the data for free, so I know that county's for free. I have another county that I have to buy them by the section. That's going to cost me a lot more. There's no standards when I'm going out and getting this data, so it's just off the top of my head. I had to start throwing some numbers, what it's going to cost. And then I got to figure out how long it's going to take me to process. Well, again, I have some counties, all the data I want is already set up there, and through a load, I can actually just go and load that right into my data set after I cut to 500 feet, really easy. Other ones, I have to massage that data quite a bit. Let's say I get a town section or a town section range. It's all in a single field. I've got to massage that out. Let's say a couple places I actually have city, state, zip, all in the same field. I've got to parse that out. So we've got to pull some of those pieces out. So I just did a kind of a throw at the dartboard and said, okay, let's figure out that it's going to cost me $250 per county for data. Again, throwing it at the dartboard, and I said it's going to take me 2 to 3 hours per county on average to load the data.
So this is where we kind of stepped in and started rolling with the project then, and it really was a situation for all parties involved where the stars just aligned perfectly. We had the availability with our staff. We have a pretty decent sized team, and we had also pulled in a new staff member pretty recently. So we had staff available and on hand to be able to kick off this project right away. So we jumped right in, started contacting counties, and one thing that we did on a weekly basis in order to open up those communication channels between our staff and ECC folks is we provided these weekly status update maps. So every week we just kicked out a quick update to show where we were at, and that helped Nedd keep track of budget, seeing if we're going to be able to spend the money that he had allocated, and just see where we're at time-wise as well with the project. So as you can see, well, maybe you can't, it's actually a little blurry, but the maps that we pulled together, we just had the whole transmission alignment for ATC on there, and then we just coded the counties based on where we were at with the acquisition. If we had contacted the county, if we were awaiting data, or if we had already received the data and we're in the process of putting it into ATC's standard data set. And this is a breakdown of the costs by county or municipality. So as Nedd started to talk about, one of the challenges that we faced at the beginning of this project was figuring out costs. And as you are all aware, there are multiple different costs throughout the state. So just to kind of show an example, 45% of the parcel data that we received was free. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, 2% of the parcel data that we received was greater than $1,000. So now, one thing I do need to mention with this is certain counties, because of the way that we were requesting the data, we were not necessarily requiring an entire county data set. We were looking for within 500 feet of the corridors. So that helped with some counties. They were able to provide us just a subset, and that did reduce the cost in some cases. However, I think for other counties that may have made it a little more challenging for them to provide us the data. So that's something to keep in mind when we look at these prices. It's not by the entire county, it's a smaller subset.
Now, one thing I will throw in there is that the greatest cost of all these counties actually is Marquette, Michigan. It was not a Wisconsin county, just FYI. Now, when I first contacted them a couple of years ago, I bought their entire county because I had to have it for a project. There was no getting around it. I spent $7,000 on it. That was crazy. So when I came back and wanted an update, they told me it's going to cost you another $7,000 for this county, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't going to fly. I'd rather have old data than do that because it's going to blow my budget really quick. However, what I did do is I did go out, and a lot of you have your license agreements on the website, you have your pricing structures out there. I actually grabbed, I think, 18 different counties from the state of Wisconsin, and I actually shipped it up to Marquette, and I said, okay, you guys are kind of out of line with this, really these costs are. So I actually did take advantage of some of you here, shipped that information up there. After it's all said and done, I actually did get them down to 10% of that, so it cost me $700 for Marquette, Michigan. But again, it's one of those things where they're really out on an island. You start seeing these maps. There's not a lot of county data up there. They can kind of charge what they want.
So all told for this project, it took us approximately 400 hours of labor to complete it. That includes the time that we spent contacting counties, receiving the data, massaging it so that it would fit into ATC's standard data set, providing a weekly transmittal back and forth to ATC, and then ultimately having a final meeting and a data handoff at the end of the project. And we spent about $6,800 just on the
One of the caveat in that data set is we did do some bartering and trading as well. So ATC has transmission lines, and in some cases it was an advantage to emergency management and to some of the things that they wanted. We actually did do some trading, so that was all kind of part of this. But again, finally, that's what we did spend for the data that we did receive.
These are just a couple of the challenges that we faced while we were trying to obtain the parcel data. So there are different ways that we were able to get the data in different counties. Some counties we can go right to the website and download it directly. It's easiest. Some counties it's just a quick phone call to you guys and someone sends it on over and we're good to go. Other counties we have to pay the appropriate fees, and sometimes the cost is broken down by county, township, or sometimes by parcel. There were some instances that the data is maintained a spatial data set and a tabular data set. So just the different forms of the parcel data that we received that we ultimately had to put into one format. CAD versus GIS, we did receive some CAD parcel data that we had to convert to GIS and get that pulled over. And then one of the biggest issues is schema. So all of the different counties, all of the different schema, different breakdowns of the field, different data types, and getting that, all those to talk together and funneled into our master data set.
And one of the things that I'm going to point out again is when we had, for example, the spatial versus the tabular, there was also instances where we actually had to contact two different groups. It wasn't like I could go to one group, or they could go to one group and talk to the GIS person and say, okay, I want everything. They actually had to talk to an IS group to get and pay separately for the tabular, and in this case, one other place for the spatial. So again, we were kind of jumping through hoops for data. As y'all can believe, the stuff that took the longest to convert, I'm sure for them, was the CAD data. I mean, a lot of us are not necessarily working in CAD data, but there certainly is some of that out there. So making sure that everything attached correctly from there was time consuming.
And this is just an example of some of the schema differences that we had. So just different breakdowns across the top. It's owner name, last name, address, but then city and state are in one field. And then the next, as an example, it's broken out a little bit farther. So there's multiple lines for the address, and then city and state are in their own field. So just examples of the different schema going on. And then ultimately what we did is pulled all the data together and loaded it into this database design. So this is an example. You can see the purple parcel work that would be all the parcels within the 500 feet of the transmission corridor that we are looking at. Over on the right, this is an example of all of the fields that we needed to maintain in our final data set. So the same schema that Nedd went through a little earlier this morning, much more basic than what the counties have to maintain.
All right, and hopefully you can see this, but this is kind of where we ended up with our coverage. Some of the things you'll notice is we actually have transmission lines throughout the UP. You can see huge holes up there. They just don't have the same system we have here in Wisconsin as far as getting some funding as far as every time they have a transaction. And let's face it, they just don't have any of the transactions up there to basically be funding their GIS. There's actually some data just south of Marquette County up in this area, being Delta County, Menominee County, and Dickinson County. That data actually did not come from the counties either. In this instance, we had a project up there. I actually had to hire also a consultant to go through and build our parcels there. I know that sounds really strange these days, but we actually had to find somebody to go build us some parcels. So, but this is really, like I said, we have 217,000 parcels right now we're maintaining, and obviously growing. Lots and lots of lessons learned actually as we go through this, and when we did this last time, everybody kind of laughed. If I'm ever going to do this project, I will never, ever, ever do it again in December and January. I apologize to a lot of you. That's your busy period. We get it. Unfortunately, that's when my funding came. So we want to stay away from that one. That didn't work so well for us. The next one is now we actually have a baseline for budget. We know what to cost. And the reason that this is a big deal is we're trying to figure out, okay, do we do this on a every other year process? Do we do it every 3 years? Do I do a third of Wisconsin each year to maintain it that way? There's many different ways of doing it, but at least we can start getting into the budget up front instead of waiting for extra money at the end. And then the last one I really want to say, and thank a lot of you really, is relationships. There is a lot of you that I call up and I pester and going, hey, I need this quick, I need it. Certainly I've pestered Justin, I've pestered Kim. I mean, I've called plenty of you saying, hey, I really need something fast. And I apologize for that, but we've all worked with a lot of engineers that do it to us on the other end. So it's kind of trickle down. We get that. Also, as we go through this, you're hearing a lot of us saying, oh, your schemas are different, your parcels are different. We're not doing that to complain. We know you can't change it. We know that's on the taxation side. That's really not what we're trying to say here. However, if we know that we're going to have to continue doing this, does it make a lot more sense to say, you know what, their schema is never going to change. We're going to have Stantec or somebody in ourselves for each county write a script that every time we get it, it's actually going to go and do those changes for us. That's some possibilities. So we're really trying to figure out what's the best way to kind of skin this cat, because we need the data, we need it all the time. So anyways, that's some of the things that we're learning for the future.
These are just some suggestions that we came up with as we were going through the parcel routes as well. Sometimes when we contacted counties or different municipalities to get the parcel data, they were also able to provide us PLSS or MCD data that they had been updating kind of more on a local scale. But I think that's just something to note that statewide, that MCD and the PLSS data, that might be something that could be looked at in the future to go about updating that. Additional suggestions that we faced was talking about multiple releases. So there are situations that we ran into with counties where, because we approached counties at a very difficult time throughout the year, there was occasionally just some caveats with transferring the data because it was in limbo. They were working on updating, and so what they were going to provide to us wasn't going to be current in a few days if they were updating things. So we talked about the possibility of just having multiple releases throughout the year, and all knowing well that the data that we have in hand in a situation like this wouldn't be the most up to date, but that we could look for multiple releases throughout the year in order to re-grab that data and catch any changes. As Nedd touched on, for this project in particular, we chatted about doing updates every 3 years as an option. And again, we're not suggesting that we need to enforce a global schema change, but more just pointing out that with all the different schemas that are coming from the counties, that we maybe need to try to figure out a way to streamline that to push it all into one master data set.
Certainly we're going to open this up to questions and answers, but I really want to go back and kind of reiterate is you know what? Parcels in Wisconsin are fantastic. Really. When you're used to dealing with the UP, when you're used to dealing with some of those other places, just the fact that I can get that data and feel very comfortable about getting it out there. One of the concerns that was brought up the last time we presented, and I thought it was very interesting, is that one person said, I don't want to give you my data because my data is going to overlap in some places with the other county. There's going to be inconsistencies on where theirs are at. There may be 20 feet difference, or maybe 50 feet difference. Just particular how they were set up, how they were acquired, and some of those things. And what I kind of want to reach out to all of you, and I know this is going to sound pretty sad, but I don't care. I need to contact somebody. When I'm doing buffers on these, I'm doing a large enough buffer in there that I'm getting all the people I need, maybe in some cases too many. But, I'm not saying that I don't want accuracy. We all want accuracy. But the second we go out, and if we're building something, if we're reconstructing something, we have to go survey anyways. This is just where our starting point is. It's where we're doing our mailing addresses. It's, if it's an emergency and we have a pole that needs construction, we get a hold of somebody very quickly. These are just a huge, huge asset for so many pieces of our company that it's data that I have to have and I have to keep up. So it's something that, again, we want to thank you guys, but at the same point, push it forward a little bit in the future. Questions from you? Yes, sir.
What if you had to do this prior, without this database? What would it cost? Do you have any idea of the magnitude of difference between the you had to work in a non-automated world and do what you have to do versus an automated?
So are you saying if we had to build our parcels ourselves?
Yeah.
Well, I think the going rate right now on parcels, if you fit, would you ship it across seas at that point? Would you do somebody local? I mean, that's something that when we did a project, I think, okay, so I'll take Dickinson County as an example. I think when we came down to it, it's costing you probably $4 or $5 a parcel. I mean, and that all depends on the courthouses and even their records of pulling as well. So
200,000 times $5.
Yeah, exactly.
Every 3 years you'd have to do.
Well, yeah, and at that point, it wouldn't be that same price because you'd be doing updates, but still trying to get those through the courthouses and having their cooperation. That's a lot of time on their side as well. On your side as well. Yes, sir.
Your thing on schema, you're moving a global schema for exchange. Explain more about that.
So I know in conversation in the past, we're talking about statewide parcel data. It's been discussed that we want to enforce that all counties maintain a schema for the exact same schema for every single county that talks to one another, everything matches up. That's not something that this presentation is not trying to persuade you.
But you're advocating for it.
I'm advocating for a way to have everything, like writing Python scripting so that everything can talk to one another. I'm not saying you have to go that far.
I mean, not to be rude, but
I said it.
not to be rude, but we just did your pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we did. We did your pilot. We felt the pain. It's an ongoing pain. We certainly could be here for questions if it were to go forward. But I think everything that we internally went through, we know the counties are not going to change, their taxation records or those files and things like that. We know that that's been an ongoing issue with all of you guys all this time. But I'm saying on our side, if we're going to keep continuing this, which we have to, we're probably going to have to build for each county a tool or something saying, okay, now I got in Wood County, for example. Let's use this as my load as part of it. And then, of course, at that point, either I will change something and have to reprogram it as well. Did I say that? I'm sorry. Oh. Go ahead.
What's your estimate of the labor costs associated with rolling just 200,000 parcel data set?
Well, again, it's very difficult because now we try to, and when we started this like 7 years ago, whenever we had a major project in a county, we could, through that project, pay for the parcels and we kept updating them as we go. And that's what we would like to do is kind of have the major projects within ATC pay for it. However, we were finding counties within there that were getting way out of date. At one point, I think we had some that were dated, 2002? I think were some really old parcels. So it's really hard to say, what is our yearly cost of maintenance on this? Because some of the stuff when we have free or have a project in that area, those are all constantly being updated. We have other ones that are really
Yeah,
stagnant.
not the cost of the data, the cost of the labor to stitch it together and work out the scripts and work out the.
It was somewhere around $80,000. Yep. Yeah, that was the final labor cost was somewhere in there for all the administrative, all the time spent, everything. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just comment, Ned, like you, I work with a lot of different database schemas from different counties, cities. I think you can comment on this is the importance of metadata and documentation about what you have. Smart GIS geeks and database geeks, they'll be able to get the data into whatever format they want, but it's critical that you provide them the guts of what fields are there, how it was created, what field 4 is, and what its structure is and what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting because after staring at this stuff for so long, and working with you guys and going, oh, this comes in, I know this one, I know that one. It's really when, I would say overall, a lot of the metadata we get is in a Word document or a text document, and we can go get it. And that was in most cases, supplied for when we had questions. I don't think we had a real problem figuring that out. What is interesting is a lot of times we'll get those databases, and what we're looking at is a small piece of sometimes what's been sent. Sometimes we get some files that are huge, going, okay, is this a farmstead? Is this zone this, zone that? And, we all like our data. We like as much as possible, but we're really trimming down to what the actual needs of the project is. Yes, sir.
I presume from listening to you that you'd be happy if somebody told you when the ownership of a parcel changed.
We would, but that brings up a great question. Is okay? If you tell me, does it take me more time to update them one at a time, or?
Well, the point, my presumption is correct. It would be nice if you knew when the ownership changed.
Sure.
We live in an environment in which we have a register of deeds system that I would describe as arcane and 19th century passive, in the sense that somebody, when there's a transfer of ownership, deposits a deed in the register. That's a passive action on the part of the register of deeds. A future modernization, getting out of that 19th century passive mode and looking forward to a modernized system reliant upon modern technology, would allow the following to happen. At a few strokes, the register of deeds could inform you of that change. And you're not the only organization. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of private and public organizations that would benefit from a form of modernization in the Register of Deeds office, expanding the things beyond the change of ownership, using modern technology that would involve the Register of Deeds ceasing to be a passive 19th century, responsive organization and become active in the sense of using modern technology to inform you and relieving you and all of your hundreds, if not thousands, of counterparts of whatever efforts you have to do to find out that there's a new owner.
Sure. And I get where you're going. Obviously, the difficulty with that is obviously that's hard enough to enforce at the state level. I'm dealing multi-state level. So, that's something that we deal with as well. I mean, try walking into a courthouse up in Michigan and just see actually, in some cases, how much less technology than we even have in Wisconsin. And trying to bunny hop, technology and things like that for there. Now, obviously that's a role of many of you internally. Again, being greedy on my side, because like you said, there's hundreds of people like myself that we just need data. I mean, point blank, that's sort of our giant needs. How that happens, that's still more of this organization of people inside here. Yes, sir.
What's your process when there's holes in the along your line?
Our process right now is if no one's asking for it internally, it just sits there and keeps getting stagnant. But because we have that data date, we know how stagnant it is right there. So at least we keep there. Again, it's not until we have to go out and reach out to these counties and say, oh, I have a major project in this area, I repurchase it, I cut out the old, I bring in the new. So that's where we said, before we started this update right there, we had some that were only a month old, we had some other stuff that was 2002. And that just wasn't acceptable for some of the speed that we need to get out. That's why we did this complete update with that quick and dirty. So
I guess what I was asking was, what if that person did at all after the whole parcel along your line? Say you're in,
What if the county's not maintaining it?
what's that process of?
right. So if I need it, plat books. Our real estate department has to call the county and work with them to either say, can you generate a mailing list that is all within this quarter section? I know I hit all these quarter sections and we don't have something graphically, but at least we get notification out to everybody that lives in that area. If we have long enough leeway, we actually will, and it's an important project we're building. I actually have outsourced, like I said, up in the UP, I actually had to go get a consultant and say, hey, can you build me some parcels? So each place is really different, and it depends on what kind of leeway I have and really kind of how hard is that hammer right now.
Is that data part of the dataset?
Yeah, so again, the parcels that I had in Dickinson County in Michigan and parcels that I had over in Chippewa were something that were all built by a consultant. Actually, within our data, we actually have supplied from, and most of those say county, but in those cases, it actually says the consultant's name who actually built the parcels for me. So again, we know where they came from. Bill?
So you said that you collected 73 counties, and I know that you went in multi-states.
Yep.
So you basically, for the $18,000 per cost, have 73 different schemas for ETL, and now going forward, you ETL that process.
Correct.
You get the schema for every county.
We didn't build that we didn't build that converter. We didn't build those things. Everything was done by hand by Stantec right now, so it's not like I can just. Is that what you mean? Is like
Yeah, well, she was talking about the script, right? So
well, we talked about building scripts for it if this is, something we want to do, but because of our short time frame, we couldn't build scripts with that last thing. We're talking about maybe we should be building scripts.
going forward, that would be. So like you would take advantage of the standardization we had as, the exchange format for a parcel data set. We had a standard exchange, so don't talk about the county, we won't talk about counties, how they maintain and how they store it. It gets shipped up to the state, the repository, it's structured in a way that then you guys can pull and do this process.
Correct.
But it was 73 counties.
Yep.
So going forward, it actually sounds like it could be a lot simpler. Because in a year and a half, that will be in place for the state. Do you need more attributes for the 7 that are listed now by law?
No,
Okay.
we don't. Really, we have to be able to get a hold of them. And the reason we need town, section, range, and municipality is because all of our easements are written up that way, and it's much easier for our real estate person to do the search. That's really all we need. We don't get a lot of requests for additional attributes. We're not looking for the zoning. We're not looking for, acreage, even though we can calculate that ourselves. Those are
So
not.
NCD, PLSS, and then
Yep. Correct. Yes, sir.
Do you have a contact person? A lot of things that happen is like there's a 100-foot easement that ATC has, and they go down and mow down everything. And we have people who are calling us saying, "Well, my garden is over here, and I've got somebody who's coming through and just going through and eliminating it. I got a tree that's in the line; it's gone now.
Sure.
Exactly. Who do I contact at ATC and say what's going on with this thing?
Okay,
Do you have a contact?
and there's a perfect example because before we send out our veg management, that's exactly what it's called, a letter should go out to each property owner on that line. Now, if I don't have up-to-date parcels or ownership, or I don't have parcels at all, that's much harder mailer to get out. But each person on that line should be getting a contact saying, if you have an issue, here's when we're coming, here's who you should talk to. All those things should be already happening. If not, yes, after this, I can give you a contact name, who that person would be. Absolutely.
So you do contact the owner saying this is basically where we're going to go because this is where our
Yeah,
easement's at.
because I do those every day.
Okay.
Every day I get a list going, oh, we're going to do veg management on such and such. You get together a mailing list and a quick map so that they know here's where we're coming.
Okay.